My father is cancer-free now, but I'm struggling to set boundaries after becoming his caretaker at 26. I was 26 years old when I became my father's caretaker. Not because I wanted to, not because I was ready, but because there was nobody else. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I am a 26-year-old man, working an IT job in a big city, far from home. And for the last 5 months of my life, I have been watching my father, a man I deeply love and deeply resent, fight stage for cancer from the corner of my small rented flat. He won that fight. The doctor called him cancer-free last week. And somehow, I have never felt more lost in my life. Let me take you back. I grew up in a middle-class family in a small hometown. My mother was a government employee, strong, quiet, exhausted. She paid our school fees. She bought our books. She kept the lights on. She held everything together with hands that were always just a little too tired but never stopped moving. My father was soft-spoken. He was never cruel, never violent. He smiled easily. He laughed with relatives, impressed friends, showed up to weddings and festivals with his chest puffed out like a man who had built something. But he hadn't built anything. There were no savings, no investment, no plan, no backup, just charm, just presence. Just a man who always found a way to make other people feel good while the woman beside him quietly carried the weight of an entire family on her back. My mother and father fought for years. Not dramatically, not loudly, but in the way two people fight when one of them has been quietly abandoned by the other. In small silences, in cold rooms, in the way she stopped asking him for anything because she already knew the answer would be nothing. By the time I got my first job at 23, I looked at our family's financial situation and felt the air leave my lungs. Zero savings. No emergency fund. No inheritance. Nothing. I was the oldest child. I had a younger sister. And it became very clear to me, very fast, that if anything went wrong, I was the plan. I was the only plan. So I started building. Quietly. Alone. I saved money. I invested what I could. I sent money home. I told myself that I would build what my father never did. That I would give my mother and sister the security they deserved. And for 3 years, I did. And then January 2026 came. My father called me on a Tuesday evening. His voice was different. Smaller, somehow. Like it was coming from somewhere farther away than usual. He said the doctors found something. Stage 4. I don't know how to describe what happened inside me in that moment. There was grief, yes. There was fear. But underneath all of that, underneath the love that I have always carried for this man despite everything, there was something else. There was guilt. Guilt for every moment I had resented him. Guilt for every time I had looked at what he failed to build and hardened my heart just a little. Guilt for the fact that even in that terrible moment, a part of me was already calculating what this would cost. Because I knew. I already knew. There was no one else. My mother had her own health problems. She was still working full-time. Her peace, the small, fragile peace she had built for herself in that little house she owned, depended on distance from him. Their relationship had been broken for years. No relatives stepped forward. Not one. So I said, come to me, and I will take care of you. He moved into my shared rented flat in February. I want you to understand what that means. A shared flat in a job city is not a home. It is a room. It is flatmates who have their own lives. It is thin walls and shared kitchens and schedules that don't belong to you. But I made it work. I took him to every chemo appointment. I sat in those hospital corridors for hours, watching other families, wondering what it felt like to have more people around you. I managed his medicines, the schedule, the doses, the side effects. I cooked meals that matched his dietary restrictions. I held him on the nights when the treatment made him sick, when he was too weak to walk to the bathroom alone, when he looked at me with eyes that were both grateful and ashamed. I loved him in those moments. Fully. Without condition. And I was also, in those same moments, completely falling apart. My savings, the savings I had built from zero, the savings I had meant to use to build something for our future, were disappearing. My work suffered. My focus was gone. My mental health, which had never been particularly strong, was cracking under the pressure. And still, I kept going. Because what else do you do? What else do you do when the person who never showed up for you is lying in your bed, thin and fragile, needing you more than anyone has ever needed you? You show up. You show up even when it costs you everything. 5 months later, the doctor sat across from us and said words I had been praying to hear. Cancer-free. I should have cried. Maybe I did, a little. But mostly what I felt was not joy. It was something more complicated than joy. It was relief tangled with exhaustion, tangled with a question I did not know how to ask out loud. What happens now? Because here is what I noticed in the days after that appointment. My father, this man who had just beaten stage for cancer, this man whom the doctor said could return to normal life, could return to work slowly, could begin to rebuild some independence, did not seem interested in any of that. He started calling himself an old man. He started saying he was sick, still sick, always sick. He stayed in bed longer. He became quieter. He looked at me with those same eyes, the grateful ones, the ashamed ones. But now there was something else in them too. Settling. I recognized it. I had seen it my whole life. It was the look of a man who had found someone else to carry him and had decided that was enough. And something in my chest, something that had been cracking for months, finally broke. I am not a bad son. I want you to know that. I want you to believe that, even as I tell you what I am thinking. I am thinking of helping him go back to our hometown. I am thinking of setting up his medicines, organizing his follow-up appointments, giving him a fixed monthly amount for medical expenses. I am thinking of asking him to find a small rented room and try, even slowly, even imperfectly, to find some work or some structure. To exist as a person with some agency, not just as my dependent. I am thinking of taking my life back. And I feel so guilty for thinking it. I keep asking myself, am I abandoning him? He just had cancer. He almost died. He is my father. How do I look at this man and say, I have given everything I have, and now I need to stop? But then I ask myself the other question, the one nobody talks about. How do I support a recovering parent without becoming responsible for the consequences of his lifelong irresponsibility? Because here is the truth. He did not get cancer because I failed him. He did not end up without savings and security because of me. He did not spend my entire childhood building nothing because he was unlucky. These were choices. Quiet choices. Comfortable choices. The choice to let someone else carry the weight. The choice to keep everyone around him happy while the people closest to him suffered. And now that he is cancer-free, now that the doctor has cleared him, he is making that choice again. He is choosing to settle into my life, into my flat, into my exhaustion, as if what I did for him during those 5 months was not sacrifice, but a promise. I never made that promise. I think about my mother sometimes, in those quiet hours after midnight when I cannot sleep. I think about her hands, how tired they always looked, how she never stopped moving, how she gave everything and asked for nothing, and still ended up unwell, still ended up alone in that small house she owns, still ended up carrying herself forward through sheer will. I think about my sister. I think about the version of my life I was trying to build before all of this. The emergency fund, the better future, the breathing room. And I think about love, because I do love him. That has never been the question. The question is whether love means I must disappear for someone who was never willing to do the same. I don't think it does. I think love can look like a fixed monthly medical allowance and a phone call to arrange his follow-up appointments, and making sure he has a roof over his head and food in his stomach. I think love can also have a limit. I think limits are not abandonment. I think a 26-year-old who gave up his savings, his mental health, his flat, his career focus, and 5 months of his life. I think that person has already proven his love beyond any reasonable measure. I just wish it didn't hurt so much to say that. He is cancer-free now, and I am still figuring out how to be free too. Not free from responsibility. Not free from love. Not free from the complicated, aching bond between a son and a father who never quite knew how to show up for each other. Until, finally, one of them did. I just need to make sure that in saving him, I don't lose myself completely. Because nobody is coming to save me. And I have always known that.